My husband's family keeps bringing up my past, so I brought up theirs. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and I've been married to my husband for a little over 2 years now. He comes from an old money family, the type that uses phrases like legacy and pedigree in normal conversation without blinking. They live in a different world: country club memberships, private schools, summer homes by the lake. My background is nothing like that. I grew up in a working class neighborhood where you learned early how to patch a tire and stretch leftovers for another meal. At 15, I made a dumb mistake, shoplifted something small from a convenience store. I was caught, got a juvenile record, and spent the next decade making sure that one moment didn't define my life. I got my act together, finished high school with good grades, earned a computer science degree, climbed through the ranks in tech, took some risks, and eventually started my own company. It took years, but the business finally took off. These days, I lead a team of brilliant people and help build products that make a real impact. You'd think that would be enough for anyone to move past a teenage mistake, especially since I've never hidden it. My husband knew about it before we even started dating. Seriously, he never made it an issue. His family, on the other hand, treats it like an inside joke they all get to share at my expense. The first time it happened was subtle. We were at a family dinner a few months before the wedding. His father raised a glass and said something about keeping valuables locked up with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. The room chuckled awkwardly, and I let it slide. I figured maybe it was a one-off, but then his mother started calling me the comeback kid at every event, always with a little smirk. Always with just enough sarcasm to make it clear she wasn't complimenting me. I tried to fit in. I offered to help where I could. Got his brother a job referral at a startup I had connections with. Built a website for his sister's custom candle business for free. None of it changed anything. The jokes kept coming. At a neighborhood barbecue hosted by one of their friends, his brother loudly handed me a plastic fork with a wink and said, "Just in case anything goes missing." People laughed, but I saw the way some of them looked at me, like the joke had some truth to it. That night, I asked my husband to say something. He told me he didn't like the jokes either, but felt trapped between loyalty to them and protecting me. I wanted to believe him, but then I found out they'd brought up my juvenile record at his bachelor party. They told stories about how he tamed the wild one and rescued a lost cause. I wasn't there, but a friend of his pulled me aside and told me everything. The way they laughed, the way they made it sound like I should be grateful they let someone like me in. At that point, I stopped hoping they'd grow out of it. I didn't confront them. I didn't yell. I just started paying attention. I began digging, not to start a war, but to protect myself. I searched public records. I hired a background researcher who owed me a favor. I made some quiet calls. What I found left me stunned. His uncle had a sealed case related to drunk driving and a hidden drone from years ago. His father had been named in a tax investigation that vanished before it hit the papers. His cousin got expelled from college for academic fraud, but the family told everyone she left to explore her passions. I didn't say anything. I put everything into a folder and locked it away. My husband didn't know about it yet. I didn't want to drag him into something unless I had no choice, but I wasn't going to stand there smiling if they kept using my past as a party trick. Then came the baby shower for our first child. We hosted it at our house, tried to keep it simple. My parents were there along with close friends. His family showed up early with big gifts and big grins. His father stood up to give a toast. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd keep it respectful for once. Instead, he said, "It's amazing what someone can accomplish after juvenile hall." Everyone laughed like it was just another funny line. Except this time, my parents were sitting right there, my colleagues, our friends. That was the moment I knew I had to act. Not to get revenge, not to start drama, but to set a boundary they couldn't cross again. I'd stayed quiet too long, tried too hard to play nice. I wasn't the 15-year-old kid they liked to joke about. I had worked for everything I had, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not the people closest to my husband, keep dragging that one moment around like a leash. The baby shower was held at our new home. We had just moved in a few weeks earlier, and I wanted everything to be perfect. I had the backyard cleaned up, brought in extra seating, and hired a local bakery to handle the desserts. My husband took care of the invitations and decor, and we made sure to include both sides of the family. His family showed up 20 minutes early. His parents brought a mountain of wrap boxes. His brother carried in a custom bassinet with a handwritten note, and his sister brought a 3-tiered diaper cake that looked like it belonged in a magazine. On the surface, it all looked generous, but it didn't take long for the old patterns to surface. His father walked in, looked around, and said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Amazing what someone can do after juvenile hall." It was delivered like a joke, but the way a few guests exchanged looks told me exactly what they were thinking. My husband didn't respond. He smiled weakly and went to pour drinks. Later that evening, when we had a moment alone, he apologized for the comment. He mentioned how his father just gets like that and brought up his blood pressure and how the stress of confrontation might make things worse. It wasn't the first time he had excused it as humor. I didn't argue. I nodded, then went back to the party. While giving a few of the guests a tour of the house, I noticed his sister walking slowly through my home office. I'd spent time setting it up, a few framed awards, my company's logo, etched on a glass plaque, and photos from our launch event. She stood by the desk holding her phone up. I asked if she needed anything. She said she was just admiring the setup. I let it go. That night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up, I checked my phone. A friend had messaged me a screenshot. His sister had posted one of the photos from my office. The caption read, "From thief to CEO, only in America." No tags, no names, but it didn't need any. Everyone close enough to know our story would know exactly who it was about. I showed my husband. He told me to breathe, said his sister didn't mean harm, and reminded me about his mother's high blood pressure and how his father had been losing sleep. I told him I wasn't asking for permission anymore. This wasn't just a joke. It was humiliation dressed up as family banter. And if they wanted to keep dragging my name, I was going to drag theirs. Not with lies, just with the same honesty they loved to throw at me. A few days later, we were invited to a brunch at his parents' place. We brought the baby dressed in a little blue onesie with matching booties. Everyone gathered in the garden area. His mother handed me a plate and, while cooing at the baby, said, "Hope he doesn't inherit those sticky fingers." Another round of laughter followed. I didn't laugh. I stood, gently placed my plate down, and asked if we were really going to keep doing this. I looked around the table and said that if we were going to joke about family history, maybe we should include everything. I mentioned his father's past tax issues that somehow disappeared after an audit, his uncle's hidden drum that involved a teenage cyclist, his cousin's academic scandal that led to expulsion, even though they told everyone it was a voluntary leave to explore art. The laughter stopped. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into the diaper bag and pulled out the folder I'd been carrying. I placed it on the table. The tabs were labeled. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Everyone knew what it was. His father stood up, red-faced. His mother slammed her napkin down. Some of the guests got up and left. A few stared into their plates. Nobody said another word to me. I picked up our child, looked at my husband, and we walked out together. No shouting, no goodbyes, just silence. That night, my husband sat with me in the nursery as we rocked our son to sleep. He didn't try to defend his family this time. We agreed that we needed space. No more dinners, no more visits, no more invitations. At least not until we figured out what peace looked like for us and for our child. The day after the brunch, we packed a few bags and checked into a hotel on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, and far enough from the drama to think straight. We told our neighbors we were taking a few days off to rest. Nobody asked questions. My husband spent most of the first day bouncing between our baby snaps and pacing around the room. He wasn't upset about what I said at the brunch. He admitted the facts were true. What got to him was how everything played out in front of so many people. He kept going back to the scene, his father's reaction, his mother's face, the way the guests froze. He never denied what they'd done over the years, but he hadn't expected it to be aired like that. I didn't argue. I reminded him of every dinner where I sat through their comments, every event where someone threw in a jab about my past like it was family trivia. I'd asked him to speak up more than once. Nothing changed. I didn't choose public exposure because I wanted attention. I chose it because private conversations went nowhere. His father called 3 times that afternoon. No apology, no reflection, just voicemails demanding he rein in his wife and fix the mess before the family name took a hit. He listened to one of them with the volume low, shook his head, and told me he was done. He opened his contacts and blocked his number. Later that night, his mother sent a long text, paragraphs of passive-aggressive guilt, painting me as vindictive, unstable, and dramatic. She claimed I had shamed them in their own home and poisoned the family. I replied with a short message listing the years of insults, screenshots of their online comments, and examples of how they've made my past a running joke, then blocked her number and social accounts completely. The next day, I got a notification. His brother had quietly unfollowed my company's page. That wasn't a surprise, but a few hours later, he posted on his personal profile, "Some people dig their own graves and then ask why no one's at the funeral." It didn't name anyone, but the timing wasn't subtle. I forwarded the post to a lawyer I'd worked with on a previous business deal. He looked it over, confirmed that nothing I said at the brunch broke any laws. Everything I shared was backed by records, public information, court filings, confirmed dates. Still, I didn't want things to spiral online, so I drafted a message and sent it to his brother. It was formal, direct. I told him any further defamatory post would be met with legal consequences and that I had already archived everything he'd shared about me. The post was deleted by the end of the day. He never replied. After that, I started a spreadsheet. I documented every message, every call, every post. I added timestamps, archived screenshots, and kept it backed up in 2 cloud drives. I wasn't planning a lawsuit, but I wanted to be ready if this turned into something uglier than it already was. Back at the hotel, my husband and I had our first serious conversation in weeks. No distractions, no family interference. I told him he was free to maintain any kind of relationship he wanted with his parents, his siblings, whoever, but our child wouldn't be part of it, not if that environment stayed toxic. He nodded, no hesitation. He agreed to pause visits, decline calls, and told me that trust had to be earned, not inherited. We scheduled a counseling session that same week. It wasn't just for damage control, we needed it. The therapist was calm and sharp, asked hard questions. Within minutes, it was clear that his avoidance, his silence, had played a big role in how long this had gone on. Not maliciously, but out of fear. He said he thought ignoring it would make it stop. Instead, it made it grow. I wasn't angry in that session. I just laid out what had happened. The name-calling, the online posts, the baby shower toast, the brunch. The therapist didn't rush to conclusions. She helped us build a plan. Part of it included something I suggested. A formal conversation with anyone in his family who genuinely wanted to rebuild trust, but not over dinner, not casually. Only after they met 3 conditions: acknowledge what happened, apologize without excuses, and agree to boundaries going forward. We stayed at the hotel for 4 nights. It wasn't a vacation, but it gave us a break. No visitors, no texts, just time to think. When we left, I felt like we had finally drawn a line. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. A few days after we got back home, I received a message through a mutual friend. It was from my husband's cousin, someone who had been quiet during all the family drama, but had always been polite. He said he appreciated what I said at the brunch, said someone needed to break the silence. He asked if we could meet discreetly. Not at his place, not at mine, just somewhere neutral. We met at a small park across town. He showed up with a folder of his own. He wasn't looking for revenge. He said he just wanted to talk. He shared that he was adopted into the family when he was young, and while they provided for him materially, they always treated him like an outsider. He told me how he was expected to keep their secrets, defend their image, and keep his head down because being included was supposed to be enough. Then he told me something that caught me off guard. Years ago, the family paid hush money to cover up a workplace harassment case involving my husband's father. It had happened when the father-in-law was still running one of his businesses. The alleged victim was a junior employee. The cousin had seen some of the emails during his summer internship there. He had also found a few internal memos marked confidential. He showed me screenshots and partial documents. The payout had been disguised through a legal settlement that never made it to court. I didn't plan to use any of it. I didn't even copy it. I just took note of what he shared and added the key details to my records. I thanked him for trusting me and told him that if things escalated again, I'd keep his name out of everything. Before leaving, he told me to be careful because the family wasn't used to being challenged, especially not from the inside. That same week, my husband arranged to sit down between me and his sister. He thought maybe there was a chance to patch things up. I agreed to it, but only if we met in a public space. We chose a quiet cafe. His sister showed up, dressed like it was brunch with a client. She smiled, ordered a fancy drink, and started with small talk. I got straight to the point. She brushed off the comments she had made over the years as harmless fun. Couldn't remember a single time she defended me, but insisted I had misunderstood the tone. The conversation went nowhere. I stood, paid for my coffee, and left without another word. Back home, I told my husband again. Surface level apologies weren't enough. Jokes that cut someone down aren't harmless, and anyone unwilling to admit that had no place around our child. He didn't argue. A few days later, he started individual therapy sessions. He wanted to understand how he let it all slide for so long. I told him therapy wasn't about blame, it was about accountability. If we were building a better home, it had to start with truth. Later that week, I went to pick up our son from daycare. A woman I didn't recognize approached me outside. She introduced herself as a longtime friend of my husband's mother. She bent down, looked at the baby, and said, "Raising a little rebel, I see." Then she walked off. I didn't wait. I went straight to the daycare director and requested that all family and contact info be restricted. I gave them a list of approved individuals and asked them to inform me of any unexpected visits or inquiries. The director understood. Changes were made immediately. 2 days later, my husband's cousin contacted me again. He had overheard a phone conversation between his mother and one of the uncles. The family was planning a dinner, not for reconciliation, but to set the record straight. Their goal was to reframe the brunch incident, spin a narrative that I had been unstable, aggressive, and out to destroy the family image. An invitation came in via group email. I didn't ignore it. I replied directly in the thread stating I would not attend any staged events meant to rewrite history. I made it clear I wouldn't participate in theatrics, and that anyone still in denial about their behavior was free to remain that way, just not around me, my husband, or our child. Only one person replied, an uncle. He sent back a sarcastic message, called me dramatic, and accused me of poisoning the family bond. I didn't respond. I saved the email, logged the date, and filed it with the rest. 2 weeks after the failed dinner stunt, I received a letter in the mail. It stood out from the usual stack, handwritten, thick paper, no return address. Inside was a folded note from my husband's aunt, written neatly in blue ink. She started by apologizing for not speaking up sooner. She said she had seen the comments, the jokes, the quiet digs, but stayed silent to keep the peace. She admitted the family was fully aware of how I was being treated. They just chose not to call it out because it was easier to go along with it than to challenge it. I gave the letter to my husband without a word. He read it once, then read it again. He admitted the letter meant something, but he wasn't ready to rebuild any bridges without real accountability. We didn't reply. The letter wasn't a bridge, it was just a confirmation. Over the next few days, my husband stopped answering calls from his parents. He didn't make a big speech or post anything dramatic. He just started ignoring invitations, declining visits, skipping the usual weekend check-ins. It didn't go unnoticed. His father sent a long group message accusing him of abandoning the family, being brainwashed, and allowing outside influence to destroy their foundation. After reading the message, he looked at me and handed over his phone. I blocked his father's number on his behalf. With the noise on mute, I started focusing on something new. I had an idea for a while, something that came to mind after that first barbecue joke about plastic forks, a children's book. Not about me, not directly, just a simple story about second chances, about how mistakes don't define you. I started outlining it at night after our baby was asleep. While I was working on the draft one evening, my husband got a message from an old childhood friend, someone who had been around during our wedding planning and had laughed along with the family jokes back then. This time, she messaged to say she regretted it. She admitted she joined in because it was easier, but she also said something else, that the family had been calling around trying to spread rumors, not just about my past, but about my company. Whispering things like, I forged documents to get funding, or that I used someone else's credentials to start my first project. I reached out to a public relations consultant the next day. Someone experienced in crisis reputation control. We sat down and I laid out everything. Screenshots, dates, messages. They got to work quickly. Over the next week, they identified a pattern of social media posts where IP ranges were consistent with activity from my husband's brother's previous employer. It was clumsy, but enough to prove intent. I had the findings notarized, copied, and stored securely. Then came the moment that made it clear how far the gossip had spread. At a routine pediatric checkup, the nurse made a passing comment, something about how it must be nice to have turned it all around. It was casual, delivered with a smile, but it had that edge, like she knew something, like she'd heard a version of my life that wasn't hers to know. I didn't raise my voice. I simply corrected her, gave her the actual timeline, pointed out that juvenile records were sealed and shouldn't be the subject of hallway chatter. I asked for her name and made a note of it. Then I asked to speak to the clinic manager. After we got home that afternoon, my husband said he wanted to try one more thing. Not to fix the family, but to feel less isolated. He scheduled a video call with both sets of grandparents, his and mine, just to talk. His goal wasn't to repair what was broken, but to see if anyone from the older generation could understand the bigger picture. The video call happened on a Sunday evening. Both sets of grandparents were on. My husband led the conversation. He didn't raise his voice, didn't sugarcoat anything. He walked them through the timeline, the years of subtle humiliation, the constant jokes about my past, the silence that followed every time someone crossed the line. He explained why we had stepped away and what would need to change before we ever returned. His grandparents didn't push back. In fact, they responded better than anyone expected. His grandfather leaned forward and said he was tired of the family pretending image was more important than integrity. He shared a story none of us had heard before, how he once made a major financial mistake in his 30s, a bad investment that nearly cost the family business, but no one turned it into a punchline. No one used it to define him. He said what they had done to me wasn't just unfair, it was cruel. I stayed quiet for most of the call, let him speak, let them listen. But for the first time, I saw someone on his side not just hear us, but actually stand up and say, this was wrong. It didn't fix everything, but it mattered. A few days later, my husband told me his cousin, the one who came forward with family secrets, had decided to move out of state. He'd found a new job and was cutting ties with everyone except us. He said he was tired of walking on eggshells and wanted to start over where nobody saw him as a liability. Around that same time, his sister reached out. She sent a message asking if they could meet at a spa and reset things. My husband didn't jump to accept. He asked for my opinion. I said it sounded like damage control, not real change. He agreed to meet, but only if it happened in a public place, and he brought a friend along for support. The conversation ended quickly. No resolution, just a boundary set where there had never been one before. The fallout came the next day. His mother sent a long message filled with guilt-tripping, veiled threats, and emotional manipulation. She talked about family loyalty, legacy, and how my husband had changed. She didn't mention any of the actual events, just blamed us for tearing the family apart. Without waiting for my opinion, my husband blocked his mother's number permanently. After that, we sat down and made a decision. We wouldn't be attending any family-hosted events for the foreseeable future. No holidays, no birthdays, especially not our child's upcoming first birthday. We didn't want to spend that day managing tension or dodging underhanded remarks. We wanted joy. We wanted peace. So we made our own plans. We invited only people who had stood by us, friends, neighbors, a couple of cousins, my husband's aunt who had written the letter, his cousin who was about to move. We set it up in our backyard. Simple decorations, a rented play area, a custom cake shaped like a storybook. Just laughter, music, and space for our son to crawl around without hearing anything sharp masked as a joke. After the guests left and we cleaned up, I sat down at my desk and started drafting something I'd been thinking about for weeks. Not a letter to reconnect, not an olive branch, just a statement of record, something to send if anyone tried to reach out again without addressing the truth. I wrote out the timeline, the history, and the expectations. I didn't name names. I didn't threaten anything. It was just a clear message. If anyone wanted to be in our lives, it would come with honesty and accountability, not nostalgia and denial. A week after our child's first birthday, I finalized the letter. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't written to plead. It was a formal, straightforward message addressed to every member of my husband's family. It outlined the timeline of events going back to the first incident, listed examples of the repeated disrespect, detailed the emotional impact on our family, and closed with 3 conditions for any future contact: truth, accountability, and permanent boundaries. Within 2 days, the responses started rolling in. Not apologies, just anger. A few of his cousins fired off bitter replies, blaming me for dividing the family, saying I was making a mountain out of nothing. I didn't engage. I blocked each of them and added the messages to my log. The only call that came with clarity was from my husband's grandmother. It lasted less than 30 seconds. She said, "You both did the right thing." Then she hung up. We drew our line in the sand that day, not because we were angry, but because we had finally seen what peace could look like. And once you do, it's impossible to pretend the chaos was ever normal. 3 years have passed since that letter. Our son is 4 now, curious and kind, untouched by the shadow that once hung over our family. Last month, we received a formal envelope in the mail with a return address I didn't recognize. Inside was an invitation to his grandfather's 75th birthday celebration. There was a handwritten note at the bottom. No strings attached, just family. My husband stared at it for a long time before setting it on the counter. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think we've been here before," I replied. That night, we talked it through, not with anger or fear, but with clarity. We discussed what walking back into the house would mean, what message it might send to our son, who was old enough now to remember faces, to notice tension, to absorb unspoken things. 2 days later, my husband's cousin, the one who had moved away, called. He'd received the same invitation. He told us his parents had divorced last year, that the family dynamics had shifted. His father, one of the uncles who had been particularly cruel to me, had experienced a health scare that apparently changed his perspective. The cousin wasn't making excuses, just sharing context. "Are you going?" I asked him. "Only if you two are," he said, "and only if we go in together." We decided to send a response. Not an acceptance, but not a rejection either. My husband wrote a brief note saying we would consider attending if his father was willing to meet us privately beforehand. We suggested a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground. To our surprise, his father agreed. When we arrived, he was already there, looking smaller somehow. The 3 years had aged him more than time alone could explain. He stood when we approached, awkwardly extending his hand to me first, rather than his son. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice lacking the confidence I remembered. The conversation wasn't dramatic. There were no tears or grand apologies. Instead, he spoke quietly about regrets, about realizing too late what he'd lost. He mentioned therapy, a word I never expected from him. He talked about his own father, patterns he'd never questioned until they cost him his son. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said finally, "just a chance to know my grandchild before it's too late." My husband and I exchanged glances. We discussed our boundaries thoroughly before coming. "We'll attend the birthday," I said. 2 hours, no more. Our son stays with us at all times. One comment about my past, one whispered joke, and we leave permanently. He nodded, then slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a formal letter of apology, copied to everyone who had witnessed the brunch incident 3 years ago. He had already mailed it. "It won't undo anything," he said, "but it's the truth." We attended the birthday celebration the following weekend. It wasn't perfect. Some family members were stiffly polite, others genuinely warm. His mother hugged my husband for too long, then offered me a tentative handshake. His sister kept her distance until our son approached her, curious about her dangling earrings. As we were leaving, his grandfather, the man who had stood up for us during that video call with both sets of grandparents years ago, took my hand. "You know," he said quietly, "sometimes a family needs to break before it can heal properly." I didn't tell him that we weren't back. Not really. That one civil afternoon didn't erase years of cruelty, that we were still watching, still cautious. Instead, I simply nodded. On the drive home, our son fell asleep in the car seat, clutching a small gift his grandfather had given him, a wooden puzzle box with a hidden compartment. "Are we doing the right thing?" my husband asked, eyes on the road. I looked back at our sleeping son, then at the man beside me who had finally learned to stand firm. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I do know we're doing it right on our terms, with our boundaries, and that's not nothing." We didn't fully return to the family fold after that day. Instead, we established a careful, limited presence, occasional lunches in public places, short visits with clear endings, holiday cards with professional family photos, but no personal updates. It wasn't reconciliation or forgiveness. It was coexistence with conditions. My company continued to grow. I published my children's book under my real name this time. The folder of family secrets stayed locked away, not forgotten, but no longer necessary to keep visible. We built our life around people who saw us clearly and loved us anyway. Friends who became family, neighbors who showed up without agenda, colleagues who respected boundaries. We didn't need to burn bridges to find peace. We just needed to stop crossing the ones that led nowhere good.